MMA Rants and Raves, UFC 119, Mirko Cro versus Frank Mir, post-fight analysis. Guys, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I mean, how many times watch people making predictions, the trailers, where you expect to see something from a fight and individually from two fighters, and then when you watch the fight, something totally different happens, and that is exactly what happened in this fight. I mean, let's talk about it. First 3 rounds. I mean, if you look at the 3 rounds these guys fought, it was basically a sparring match, strictly stand-up. I mean, it wasn't until later in the fight where Mir actually tried to get a takedown. He was looking like he was trying to get some kind of leg lock, which is not going to be easy against Cro. Such powerful legs. His sprawls are very good. Very difficult guy to take down throughout his career. So what Mir did was, and this is from before the fight, he came up with a game plan. And that's a point I want to make. Mir came up with a very interesting strategy. And this strategy stems from his last fight. Guys, if you watch Frank Mir's fight against Shane Carwin, it looked like he took a page out of Shane Carwin's book of what he tried to do to him. What happened in the Carwin fight was Mir was trying to stand up on him. You know, he has really good boxing, and it went from boxing to clinch to the cage. And then Mir said to himself, look, this is why I bulked up to 265. I got to be able to handle these big monsters, these new breed of fighters that are coming into the heavyweight division. And he said, look, especially after the Lesnar fight, he's just too big, too strong, he's taking me down, and I got to do something about it. If I get bigger, maybe I can handle these guys better, maybe prevent takedowns. So, although I was going to a clinch, he said, look, maybe I can handle Carwin, but it just wasn't the case. Carwin is just a brute. I mean, a huge, big, powerful guy. Despite Mir being 265 and looking solid, he's just not as strong as Carwin. Carwin was just basically, you know, bullying him. When it went to the clinch, Mir was trying to get him up against the cage. He did, but just Carwin, as you saw, but Carwin basically just reversed it, had Mir against the cage, and the ref rescued him. First time, he separated it. Mir came back. Second time, trying to box again. Went into a clinch right against the cage. And Carwin, of course, was the guy who was able to put Mir up against the cage because he was just a physical, stronger guy. And then, of course, as you all know, Carwin, he has these fists which, to me, look like sledgehammers. He doesn't have to put much into it. He just hits you with one of those things, and it's just game over. And that's what happened. He just landed one of those things against Mir, and wow, he just crumbled to the ground. I mean, Carwin is just a brute, beast, unbelievable power this guy has. Never seen anything like it. And Mir crumbled, and that was the end of it. So, you come back from a devastating loss like this, what could you take from it? So, what could you do after a loss like this? It's devastating. There are some fighters that may never come back from something like this. So, he said to himself, look, I'm going to keep on fighting. Who's my next opponent? Mirko Cro. Mirko Cro is a lot smaller than Shane Carwin. And he came up with a plan. He said, you know what? Look what Carwin did to me. Maybe I can do it to him. But of course, it's not going to be so easy. You have to be skilled enough to stand up with Cro just to get close enough to get a clinch. And that's what he did in this fight. He, instead of being 265, slimmed down and improved his quickness, which you saw in the fight. I mean, Mir's quickness was evident. You could see his head movement was great. He was moving his legs around. He just looked really quick. He looked like he looked very fluid in his movements. He had a lot of good rhythm in his stand-up. And it just seemed like Cro couldn't time him. He was looking to get inside. He was trying to time something, maybe a kick, maybe some punches. It just couldn't seem like he was able to time Mir. And Mir, the great strategy that he used, was a brilliant strategy. He was just using his stand-up, basically not to get Cro, not to hit Cro, but to neutralize Cro, to get him guessing, to make it difficult for Cro to get inside, to land anything, and then just get to a clinch. And then what did you see after the clinch? You saw Mir basically grabbing Cro and walking with him, pushing him up against the cage, doing Roman Greco, a la Randy the Natural Couture. So what Carwin was doing to Mir Mir was doing to Cro Cop. And, you know, if you look at the fight, yeah, it looked like a sparring match, but what about all those clinches? I mean, how many times throughout this fight you saw the ref coming over to the cage and separating these two? You saw it over and over again. And it was a brilliant strategy by Mir. I said, wow, this guy, you know, he really learned something. It just came to me right there. So, oh, now I understand what he's doing. You know, you just watched the Shane Collin fight. That was his last fight. You know, he was just doing the same thing that Collin did to him. And it was just working out brilliantly. You know, he was doing two things by this. First of all, he was not only eating the clock, he was the aggressor. Any judge that sees this fight sees him winning it. And of course, you know, he was throwing the kicks against Cro Cop, trying to weaken those legs, which we know are very powerful, and trying to weaken the arms. He was trying to land things up top. He did land an elbow. So, you know, he was doing damage. It was a really good strategy. Don't try to stand up with Cro Cop. He's too skilled. Just try to neutralize him, get to the clinch, so the clinch will allow you to get to the cage where you can eat the clock and be the aggressor. And it was just working out brilliantly. And then, of course, when you do this, you're ahead in the fight. And when you're ahead in the fight, you force the other guy to take desperate measures. And that's what happened in the third. Now, it didn't look like desperation. Cro Cop started to turn it on. He was throwing more kicks. It looked like he was going to win that round. I mean, it looked like he was ahead. He was coming across. He was the aggressor rather than Mir being the aggressor. But what happened was, maybe he was a bit too aggressive. And it just seemed that Cro Cop missed a punch and Mir landed a knee. And it's just the way it happened, you know. And Mir just got the knockout. It was really something. I mean, it was really something. The strategy really paid off, and you have to give credit where credit is due, and that's to Frank Mir. And isn't it interesting, guys, how especially you're coming off such a devastating loss. I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible for Frank Mir to lose the way he did against Shane Collin. But they say that sometimes a really bad loss can be the best thing for you. And in my opinion, that was the case in this fight. It was a bad loss that Frank Mir learned a lot from. And it is so evident that he took what happened in that fight against Collin and just brought it into the fight against Cro Cop. He used what Collin did to him and did it to Cro Cop, and it is very evident. That is exactly what happened in this fight. And it was very impressive because it's not so easy just to take something from one fight to another. It was Frank Mir's stand-up which has improved exponentially. There's no way that you can just spar and stand with a guy. If you're known to be a ground fighter and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and to stand up with one of the most dangerous strikers in mixed martial arts history and be so successful at it. And like I said, he wasn't trying to improve his stand-up to a point where he was going to knock Cro Cop out. He wasn't that aggressive. He was trying to just do enough to neutralize, to get to the clinch, to get to the cage. Just watch the fight. That is exactly what happened. Frustrate him enough. Or put him in a situation where he has to be the aggressor because he's behind in the fight in order for him to make a mistake. And that is exactly what looks like what happened in the third round, where Mir got the KO, where Mir got the win by knockout. I'd like to know what you thought about the fight. Please leave your comments below the video, rate this video and subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.